So hi, Lisa, thanks so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
So today we're talking about strategic planning and how you do it.
Well, I'll give the example of how we started at the beginning of this term of office, which is about 3 years ago now. Before I was elected mayor, I was also hired myself out as a facilitator for organizations to help them to develop their strategic plan. So when I first was elected, I thought, oh, we need somebody else to do the strategic plan. And then I thought, well, wait a minute, actually, I've got the skills and the desire. And I think there's a certain ownership that we take over the plan if we do it ourselves. So there are a number of different ways to start with strategic planning. There's starting with what's right and going really well, or what's wrong and needs improvement. I tend to prefer the what's right. However, at the beginning of the term, we actually did start with all of the challenges that we saw in the community. What were all of the things that were wrong that we needed over this 4 years of the term to address? And so I gave the council some questions to contemplate in advance of coming to the first workshop. And then we began like that to identify what are all the things that are wrong, what are the challenges that we're trying to solve, and then ask them, okay, so if we have all the resources in the world, what would we do? If we have few resources in the world, what would we do? And then that's really how you shake out the longer term objectives from the shorter term objectives. The shorter term objectives are those that can be done with few resources and so implemented more quickly, and the longer term objectives are the ones that you need more resources for. In the process of answering the questions and coming up with ideas and objectives, we started to, and this is kind of conventional strategic planning, everyone got stickies and started to plot their ideas for solving these challenges that we'd identified on the wall. And then we started to group them, and then we grouped them in terms of logical objectives. And I think one of the downfalls of our strategic plan, although it is pretty powerful, and I'll talk about that in a moment, is that there are too many objectives. We have 13 objectives. And I think, next time I would do this, particularly with a local government, I would really ask us to try and focus our efforts a bit more. I think some of the categories could be combined. But 13 objectives, it's a lot, but also it's a 4-year term. So, and then once we agreed on all of the objectives, then I took all of the stickies away and crafted it up into a plan with actions and outcomes. And one of the things that's really important in a strategic plan is to be as crisp as you can with what actions are going to be taken and what outcomes those actions are meant to achieve. And in particular, when are the actions going to be taken, and when will the outcomes be achieved, and then how do you measure? So many local governments, I think, if you look around the province or around the country, don't really do a strategic plan. They lurch from issue to issue or motion to motion or staff report to staff report, and that's one way of doing business. But I think one of the reasons that we've been able to be so effective in this term of council is because we all agreed at the beginning what it is we wanted to achieve. What are the outcomes? And they're all about improving quality of life and livability for the city and the residents. I mean, if you drill down to any of the outcomes, that's what they all end up with. We want this to be a great place to live where people can afford it and is prosperous and all those things. And so one of the things that we got really rigorous about this term, and I think this is really important for any strategic plan, is a process for updating the plan. And again, in past terms of this council and in other places, a motion would be made and it would just get added to the strategic plan. But that's not strategic, right? And so what we did not only created the strategic plan, but created a process for adding new items to the plan throughout the year. So if there's an urgent item, there's a process for it to be added in. If there's a non-urgent item, there's a process for it to be evaluated. So we've created this process of evaluation so that when we're making decisions about are we really going to add anything to this plan, it has to achieve the objectives that we've set out. Again, I mean, unless there were some emergency, and in any organization, you have those kind of those plans for what do we do. Tent City, for example, was not in our strategic plan. Neither was regulating cannabis, but those things happened, and so we respond. But that's really, really important for a strategic plan, is having a process for updating it. I mean, we update it annually when we look at our budget. We look at the strategic plan. We say, do we have the resources to achieve the objectives that we've set out? And then each quarter, our staff report to us, here are your 13 objectives, here are the projects that fall under those objectives, here's the budget, and either we're on track or we're not. So we've really done a lot of work, and I would again encourage anyone with a strategic plan, make sure it's aligned with the budget, make sure the resources are there, and then get quarterly reports on the budget and on the objectives that are trying to be achieved. So now you'd like me to talk about what happens when things don't go well?
Yeah, like when things get stuck, or it gets antagonistic, or it's confusing, whatever that is. Yeah, where do you go inside as a facilitator?
Well, I think, I try and be strong and centered and clear in myself, whether it's challenging or not challenging. But I think, bringing that kind of really centered approaches, especially when I'm the facilitator, but I'm also helping to shape the plan, as in the case with when I was doing the strategic plan with council. But I think when things get heated or where there's disagreements, it's really, really important to push into that, not shy away from it. And there's a real tendency, I think, sometimes to avoid the conflict, to avoid the hard conversations, or to think that hard conversations mean that there's going to be anger. And there doesn't need to be anger to have hard conversations. And so, it's kind of 3 years ago now that we actually did the strategic plan. So I can't remember specific examples, but I know that there were things that not everyone agreed to or agreed on. And so that's when it's time to say, okay, tell me more. Tell me more about your perspective. Tell me more about your perspective. Is there something to both parties? Is there any commonality? How does everybody else feel? Is this really important? And one of the things that I use as a litmus test is, if we keep this in, or if we take this out, so if we keep this item in, is anyone going to run screaming out of the room? No? Okay, it can stay, right? So, and I guess humor is a good tactic as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And the backdrop behind you, could you just take a moment?
Sure. Well, this is, if you tilt up here, every year this starts blank, and then this is kind of a collage, if you will, of all of the things that I feel like have taken courage. So it actually says up there, lead with courage. Yeah. And so these are all situations or examples or notes that I've received, or cards where I feel like it's a manifestation of leading with courage. And then over here is my Scrum board. It's a technique used in the tech industry to get projects done, time management. The book is called Scrum, getting something like getting more done with less time. Anyway, so every Monday I kind of go through this process, and then the stickies move across the board by Friday, and how much have I accomplished. But it's a really good process for managing time when you have very little of it.
Right. Fantastic.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you
yeah,
so
my pleasure.
much. Okay.